It depends on the agenda because you got to plant always, as they say, the right tree in the right manner and the right place at the right time. And my local partners, they're the ones who tell me what needs to be done. So I never, quote, go in. They come to me and say, hey, we've got all these projects and here are the benefits. And here's what I call the SFW or the so frickin' what. I mean, what are we doing here? And what's the point? What's the machinery that we're trying to improve upon? And they have to pitch me, and tell me that this is going to work. Have you done it before? Yes, we did it 2 villages over. What happened? Lots of good stuff. Incomes went up. Water retention came up. Soils improved, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. Well, we want to, 3 miles down the road, rinse, repeat. Sounds good. How much do you need? X. Fine. Hold that thought. So I go out and raise the money one way or another.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Hank Dearden, Executive Director of ForestPlanet, Inc. Hank, welcome to the show.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Hank, you and I have known each other a long time. I mean, I don't even want to think about how many years we've known each other, so let's not go there. I've known you through all the different jobs that you've had over the last few years, but tell us about ForestPlanet.
Yes, I will say it's more than 25 wonderful years. It's great. ForestPlanet, we're a 501c3 organization. We're based here in Washington, D.C. We support high volume, low cost per tree forest restoration projects around the world. Our focus is really on revitalizing soil, supporting local communities, enhancing the local ecologies, and of course, doing our little bit to cool the planet by degree. It all adds up. The model is very simple. My background is business development, sales, marketing, got an engineering degree and all that. What's needed, though, in the world is, frankly, a sales guy. So the model is that I find organizations that are up and running on the ground, that have track history just below the radar, that have the community engagement, that have developed the community connections and all that from the community, know what they're doing. I find them, I vet them, and I visit them. And as I say, when it comes time for me to actually plant the tree, I write a check to someone who knows what they're doing. And it's kind of a touchdown twins business model where I do what I do and they love it, and they do what they do and I love it. And we work together and we work very, very closely. I'm more of a connector than anything else, but that's what sales is in the world. So that's the model.
So Hank, it sounds like ForestPlanet raises money and then kind of decides where to plant the trees. And then you work with a local organization that will actually do the planting. How do you decide where trees get planted? Is it more advantageous to plant trees in certain parts of the world because it's got greater impact? Tell us about that.
So a little bit of both. Some of the first groups I'm working with are in Africa, 1 in Morocco, 2 in Tanzania. But I did not go searching for the geographic location first. I went searching for the organizations first. Show me that you know what you're doing. And if you're in Nepal or Bahutistan or wherever, then I'll work with you. The economics have to work too. I'm operating in the incongruencies between the economies, if you will. So it's almost like an arbitrage situation where, look, the Western dollar goes very, very far in the developing world. So my business model is that I'm going for volume and keeping my overhead down, keeping my body count down. The W-2 count is frankly still 0. We're all 1099. It just, getting down into the weeds, but that impacts your overhead and you keeping that down and keeping everything completely virtual such that when the dollar comes in, it can go right back out. No one's getting rich, but everybody's got a livelihood and everybody can keep a roof over their head. And that way, the unit price, my price to the world right now is 15 cents
per tree.
Per tree. And that only happens if I can go with volume. Yes, indeed, that's rather a narrow definition of what a tree is. It does not take care of the tree for a year. It does not make sure it's water. It doesn't monitor the pump. It gets the tree planted. It's almost like the catalyst that gets the things going. That way I can work with businesses and brands who want to differentiate. For every jar of honey we sell, we plant a tree. 15 cents is affordable. They can do it. Believe it or not, I've got a corporate partner, bikinis. They plant 5 trees, right? So the offset of the trees, 5 trees, is way bigger than the footprint of the bikini because, bikini, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably a carbon negative company. Now, we can talk about this later, but we don't do rigorous carbon analysis because it's very, very tough to do and it's very costly. You can't do it. But, if you're just looking at averages, again, probably that company's carbon negative because the footprint of the bikini and selling it and all that and shipping it, whatever, can't be more than the offset of 5 trees, probably, but I won't rigorously claim that. So we don't claim to be a carbon scheme.
Well, Hank, it sounds like we got a lot to talk about with ForestPlanet, but I want to first turn to your journey. So you kind of, revealed to all my listeners how many years we've known each other. But let me ask you this question. How do you get to become executive director of ForestPlanet, which you founded?
I did found it. I guess it's like one of those things where it's like it took you until your 6th decade to realize that, that's what you wanted to do. And it kind of brings everything together. As I mentioned, I've always been in sales marketing of tech stuff. You and I met back in the .com boom, and I was biz dev for websites. And it's a very consultative sell. We worked on the first website for the Pew Trusts and NPR. And, this was tricky stuff to figure it out. You weren't just selling forks and knives. It's not a commodity type thing, but that's what I kind of studied in college was like the complicated systems and how things work and that how nothing happens until you have a customer. But, appreciate the machinery and everything that's going on behind. And then from there, it was also speech recognition and semiconductors and lots of different reincarnations. And then I bumped into another NGO that's based in the DC area in the early aughts, and they were planting trees. And to make a long story short, we helped them with their website. They liked it. I came in as a board member, and then I wasn't, and I was just a vendor, then I wasn't, and then I was the COO, and then I wasn't. It was kind of almost an abused spousal relationship spread over 12 years. And that's a 3-beer story, which I'll bore you with later. But when we parted ways in 2015, I was very disappointed because that's really what I wanted to do. I really kind of understand the mission that when you're planting trees, you're not just planting trees for fun. There's method to the madness. There's machinery here. There's a process. And quick background, I studied systems in college. And when you walk into a complicated system, like a social system, especially one that's integrating with an ecological one, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of back and forth. But when you're doing any systems analysis, you always look for the spots where you get the greatest fulcrum, where you get the greatest leverage. I got a million things I got to do here, but we're at a couple of spots where I can do the least amount of work and get the biggest bang for the buck. The magic word is leverage. And it just seemed that in so many instances that you get so much leverage from planting the trees because they kick things going in the right direction, whether it's soil restoration or water retention or as much as anything is income security and food security for people. And it's calming people down so they have a steady source. So I got it. And when they started talking about agroforestry or permaculture, where you're planting trees in close proximity to ground crops, and then you bring bees into it, or you're now farming at 3 levels. It's a factory. It's a carbon-based natural factory, but that's what's going on. And you really want to emulate the natural processes as much as possible, which is what good engineering is. You don't want to fight nature.
But Hank, let me ask you a question. So it's one thing to work for a nonprofit that's planting trees and another to start a nonprofit, right? So why'd you decide, I'm going to go out on my own and start a nonprofit? That's a challenge. And that's a deal.
It is because, you're at the top of the heap, but you're also at the bottom of the heap. So it was 2015 and I just left the other NGO. And of course, as one does, I went mountain biking in Ireland just to, get clear headed. And I really liked the mission and I really liked what they were doing. And I was familiar with it. And people were saying, well, Hank, why don't you just start your own? You were the COO. You were basically running those guys. I said, that's true, but I don't really have the chops on the ground. I'm not a tree expert. I'm not stupid. I'll listen. I'll read the book. I'll learn it, but I haven't really done it. And then I say, well, you don't have to. You just have to sub it out. Find a partner to work with or two. And I said, I can't do that. And I thought about it. And I realized, actually, yes, I can. And that's actually a better model. So again, I do what I do. And I have a network of these, what I call tree planting partners. And I want to have them eventually around the world. So I can honestly say at some point that the sun never sets on ForestPlanet. I can't say that right now. We haven't expanded into the Americas or Asia. But when we do, we'll be able to do that. And that's really honestly what was needed. And that's actually a better business model because it's more resilient. Again, you're working in the developing world where things can be dodgy. Tanzania is a perfect example. Pretty stable country, ex-German and English colony and pretty stable. And the president passed away a few years ago and a woman took charge and, things were pretty good until this year. And recently they had an election that was, let's just say it was contested. And there were riots and hundreds of people died and they shut down the internet. Things have calmed down and I'm freaked out. My teams on the ground are there like, oh, we're fine. We're good. And I just hope they get past this. But if the whole country had gone kaplooey, here I had invested all this time and effort in one country. And this is what happens in the world. Sometimes you have these conflicts. So I need to go to plan B, C, D, and E.
Yeah.
Luckily, in this case, I don't. I'm actually working with them even more closely. We can talk about that later. But that's the business model. And then being the founder was just, who's going to do this? I had talked with a couple other organizations that were in this space. Again, those are longer stories. And my mentality is I'm on nonprofit mentality. To me, nonprofit is just a tax designation. With other people, it is a mentality. And I don't mean that to be disparaging at all, but I'm a for-profit kind of guy. And that means, get things done and make sure that there's resources and you make sure there's impact. Kind of hard driver in that regard and always have been. So when I started ForestPlanet, I'd been thinking about it. And then quite frankly, the election of 2016 came around. And I'll just say it. I was so infuriated by that outcome. I was either going to do some damage or I was going to start an NGO to plant trees and just channel my anger. So in one way, if ForestPlanet, it's a big anger management project.
Well, let's turn to ForestPlanet because you and I have been talking about ForestPlanet for a long time. And I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You know an awful lot about trees. And Hank, one of the things that you said during the prep is that I actually have good news about trees, you said. And so I could use some good news. What's the good news about trees?
They work and it's fast and it's cheap. Check, check, check. All three boxes. And it checks a lot more boxes than one. And that's the part that I love. You get a lot of bang for your buck.
What does it mean that they work?
Well, again, it depends on the agenda because you got to plant always, as they say, the right tree in the right manner and the right place at the right time. And my local partners, they're the ones who tell me what needs to be done. So I never, quote, go in. They come to me and say, hey, we've got all these projects and here are the benefits. And here's what I call the SFW or the so frickin' what. I mean, what are we doing here? And what's the point? What's the machinery that we're trying to improve upon? And they have to pitch me, and tell me that this is going to work. Have you done it before? Yes, we did it 2 villages over. What happened? Lots of good stuff. Incomes went up. Water retention came up. Soils improved, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. Well, we want to, 3 miles down the road, rinse, repeat. Sounds good. How much do you need? X. Fine. Hold that thought. So I go out and I raise the money one way or another, doing events with dance parties with you and your friends all going to, and all that.
Right.
Whatever I got to do. And I come back and I just say, okay, write me the proposal, spell it all out. Stroke them the check, get to work, chop, chop, let's go. And then baked into there is a trip. Show me the stuff that worked. Show me the stuff that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What did you learn? And what are we doing here now? How's it going? Send me pictures, send me videos, get satellites. And, got a lot of eyes on. And a program that works will, in my mind, check a lot of boxes. So imagine a hillside where the trees had been encroached upon, but also fires had gone through and everything else. the local villages are now, the water levels are lowering because the trees, when it rains during the rainy seasons, and a lot of areas do have a rainy season, the roots capture the water and recharge the ground level. And if you cut the trees down, you lose that water. And if you don't lose that water, then now you have refugees. People literally have to leave. No water, no nothing. So I've seen areas where, the trees are only a couple of 3 years old, but the roots are enough that they're hanging onto the water. And then what the locals do is they'll start intercropping potatoes, carrots, cabbages, beets, yams, whatever, between corn, because there's water and the soil's being retained. And, it all kind of lines up. So one field that looks like Armageddon 3 years later, it's, that's the Horn of Plenty. And that's food security. That's income security for people right there in the local, let alone the water security as well. That's what I mean by works.
So, Hank, I'm hearing a lot about the water cycle here. And here I was thinking we were going to talk about climate, but you're talking about water.
Inexorably intertwined. So sure, trees will hang on to carbon. The biomass goes in, what I'll call the first order, by the tree grows and it sequesters the carbon. That's fine. A lot of times it stimulates all kinds of bugs and other microbial activity in the soil that's not necessarily the tree, but it's close proximity to. And it creates space where air can get in. And so the soil is really like you're basically enabling the soil to suck CO2 out of the air. It's tough to measure. And then, of course, if you're providing income for the community is less likely to encroach upon the tree and cut them down for a quick buck, i.e. firewood. So you're trying to mitigate the stress of human desperation all at the same time.
Yeah.
And that human desperation, there's 1 billion with a B desperate people on this planet right now. And I haven't, again, done the math, but I wouldn't be surprised if the collective damage being done that's short-term and is not sustainable because these people are desperate, because human beings, when we get desperate, we don't think long-term. We think immediate, baby's hungry, cut down tree for firewood now. Not sustainable, tough. We've got to feed the baby now. If you can ease people away from desperation, you really cut down on that stress. So that's why the tree sort of sequesters carbon, air quotes, in multiple different ways. And then it hangs on to the water, because if there's no water in there, then the microbial life can't form and can't grow. And you don't get that positive feedback, positive in the sense of reinforcing feedback loop going on down in the soil.
Hank, what I'm hearing here is it's not just about the trees, it's about the communities that you're rebuilding. And it sounds like the communities get rebuilt, but the organizations that you're investing in get stronger. I had Sharon Eubank on a couple of months ago with the LDS Church, and she said when they make grants or, when they go into different countries, they ask the local communities, what do you need? And they work very closely with the local communities so as not to cause harm. So talk to me about that.
Frankly, it's all about the community. We are really, truly, if I hate to say it, we're like an economic development organization masquerading as an environmental one. Economics and ecology, it's the same Greek root, eco, which means home. They're two sides of the same coin. You cannot do an ecological development organization unless you're talking about the economics or the locals. And again, I don't go into organizations. My local partners tell me what they need. And that's all from the ground up. They're the ones in the community. They sell me on what they want. I might ask questions or make suggestions here and there, but at the end of the day, this is their initiative. This is their project. They have to own it.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just, you go in, you hire some people and you look good for the cameras and you leave and then you're done and nothing happens. No, this is from them, always from them, never from me.
So describe a project in Tanzania. Like, what are they planting and where are they planting?
Great. Well, we have a bunch of them. Like, one is the Hillside Project up in Arente. This is up in the mountains, the Usambara Mountains, not far from Kilimanjaro. Beautiful part of the world. Amazing. No one's ever heard of it. I had never heard of it. Incredible biodiversity. Literally up there, they have a monkey, a good looking monkey. I think Corybus is the word. No opposing thumb. Name me a primate that does not have an opposing thumb.
Wow.
And they're getting along fine. And, it's like, hang out. Hey guys, you ever thought about a thumb? They're handy. Oh yeah, no. they're living life good. So it's an amazing biodiversity, sort of isolated island across the plain, not far from Serengeti. They're hillside people. So when it rains, it's important to hang on to the water because it's a mountain and, gravity being gravity, the water flows downhill, no shock. So you got to hang on to it as much as possible. So that's what we're doing there is replanting multiple species along the hillside to hang on to the water in the mountains. And this water then goes into what they call the Pangani River. I'm sorry, I don't have a map here, but the Pangani River runs from the Indian Ocean all the way up near Kilimanjaro. It's about a 300-mile journey, right? So if it rains on the south side of the Mount Kilimanjaro, it flows into the Pangani River, and that works its way all the way down to the Indian Ocean, not far from Zanzibar, if you're following on at home on a map. And that's important. Again, imagine the visual here, because if the water is retained, you're using the trees to spongify the mountain, to spongify the soil.
Right.
So it retains.
And you don't have soil erosion, right?
Correct. You don't have the soil erosion, but you also don't have water crashing down and causing floods that can be very disruptive during the rainy season. You want to slow that down. Always slow down the water. Slow. And then during the dry season, which will come, and it can get pretty dry up there in that part of the world because you're just south of the equator, you still have water in the mountains. It's easing out. And so the water level in the river doesn't drop too much by the time it gets to the shore. Okay. Why is that important? Now, second project, mangroves.
Oh, mangroves, I know, are super important.
Super important. They sequester more carbon than any tree, but the root systems are like multiple gangly legs.
They protect shores.
But the biggest thing they have in my mind is their root systems are where all fish are born.
Right.
Because they can be safe from predators and all that. So each tree is almost like a little
nursery, right?
Exactly. So if you want to put fish back in the ocean, you got to plant mangroves by the millions. And mangroves exist on tidal areas, and tides twice a day, depending on where the moon is. The tide comes in and comes out, comes in, comes out. How far it reaches inland is a function of the river level. So whether you've got a neap tide or a spring tide, where like the moon and the sun are lined up, and during the dry season. So imagine a double pump thing going on. So if you lost all your water, if you're not retained a lot of water in the mountains, river levels downstream get extra low, which means even during the quote high tides, the tides don't reach that far in. So if you denuded areas that are in the mangrove areas, the water doesn't get in there. The trees can't revitalize themselves. They can't grow back. They might grow back naturally. It might take 200-300 years, but now you have all this soil that's exposed and it's got a lot of clay in it, which means it's baked and it's almost like the floor, and you can jump up and down on the floor.
It hurts the trees and you can't have fish.
Yeah, you're not going to grow the trees. They won't come back. So that's what you have to do there. So that's why, yes, planting trees inland upriver helps you with water management hundreds of miles away. It's a system. It's connected, which is what we studied in college.
Wow.
But that's how it all works. And then mangroves, of course, are super important because this is a fishing village in Pangani, and back to the people and back to the economy. They've seen fish populations drop 60, 70, 80% the last 20 years. Now, I don't know why, but the destruction of the mangroves can't help.
Right.
Now, it can only hurt. I'm sure there's plenty of other issues there. I have to talk to an oceanographer. But now you're dealing with two economies and you're helping them with a critical resource, even though it's a different resource in different locations, but they are connected. And that's the point.
Well, Hank, you've got these projects in places like Tanzania. But here in the U.S., what do you wish Americans knew about trees?
I think people are starting to get the word that they're good things. I mean, there's all these great books. We were talking about The Seat of Lake of Trees and Understory. And those are good books out there. They're getting awareness of that these are good things. As far as I'm concerned, I guess what I would like to communicate to anybody who's potentially interested in working with me is that the impact is fast. The benefits accrue. You don't have to wait 30, 40 years for the tree to grow to maturity before you get good benefits where you, quote, literally sit in its shade. You don't have to sit in its shade for it to benefit communities like right away. And as I always say, trees planted anywhere help everyone everywhere. So there's a great shot that was taken by the Voyager of Earth when it was passing, I think, Neptune or whatever. And it was just this itty bitty pale blue dot. And that's what they call it. It's this pale blue dot. And that really puts things into perspective. And people will ask me and say, well, why don't you plant trees here? And I go, dude, it's all here, because
wherever you plant it, it benefits the whole planet.
It's all here. Trees planted anywhere help everyone everywhere in multiple ways. Well, why don't you plant trees in your backyard? To which I say, well, what's stopping you?
Right, yeah.
How many problems you want me to solve? This is our focus. We can get more trees planted for buck in the developing world and solve more highly integrated and delicate social problems. People want to say, well, I've seen pictures of Haiti and it's a total mess. So how would you fix Haiti? And I'm like, well, give me a couple $2 billion and I would fix Haiti. But I guess what we're trying to do is keep countries from becoming Haiti. And that is steady income, steady community involvement, food security, income security.
And an environment that works for them because of the trees.
Exactly. The trees are a part of it. So one of the things we do where we're planting the trees, so the mangrove trees, those are great homes for beehives. Because they do flower and it's a very thick, rich African honey. It's the real deal, right? This is intense stuff. And so there's little consortiums, these groups that manage 20 or 30 beehives. So these people's livelihoods are tied to the fact that the trees ain't getting cut down.
Right.
So we found a grant to get another 50. And I would like to do 50 more. There's room for hundreds and hundreds of beehives, providing livelihood for half the village that used to get its money from fish. And honey is high demand.
Yeah.
And it's good business. Oh, and by the way, it's quite nutrient dense and everything else. So it checks a lot of boxes and it kind of creates an economic cocoon, if you will, around the trees. Ain't nobody cutting down those trees if everybody's livelihood is tied directly to them.
Right. Well, Hank, 2026 is upon us. What are you looking forward to in 2026?
Couple things. I would love to have more business partners, more supporters. I would like to do everything that I'm doing now, but add a couple of zeros to the impact. We're 9 years old. We've helped get about 2 million trees planted. I wish it was 200 million. We've got the model, we've cracked the code, and we, as some of our local friends in the community have said, I just got to throw more gas on this fire and get it going. One of the things I am cautiously optimistic about, even though I have some healthy skepticism, is the whole carbon markets. That's a whole nother discussion. But I think that there's some there, and there might be a model that I'm exploring now. And in fact, we just got a small grant from a carbon market to map out a bunch of potential planting sites, mangrove sites in Tanzania. So as we speak, right now, this second, here in December 2025, we've got guys on the ground and getting paid a living wage, a good wage, to do very hard work to map out, basically to create the blueprint, if you will. So we're being hired as architects to create the blueprint for the planting project. And then once that's done, then we can find investors, there are literally investors out there who will front money to get millions of trees planted, again, to greatly accrue to the benefit of the local community. And they get their money back with the carbon credits, which is fine with me. Rinse, repeat. I'm optimistic about. So in 2026, I really want to push that envelope a little bit further, really explore that potential there, because I think there's a lot of resources that could come to play and using market forces to do so.
Well, Hank, it sounds like you're looking for corporate partners, but will you also take small individual donations? And how does someone support you?
forestplanet.org/donate. And also check out the business partners that we do have, kind of pull the rope, as it were. You can vote with your dollars. So we've got people who make honey. We've got Woody Harrelson's got a line of vodka and gin, believe it or not, and they plant a tree with every bottle sold. So when you're in the market for these types of things, look around. One of the companies, actually associations, and folks might be interested in this. We have a corporate partner called Sign Hero, and they make yard signs. They differentiate how many people make yard signs. We're running into an election year. They pop up like weeds everywhere. And a lot of them end up in landfill. Well, at least with Sign Hero,
you plant a tree.
You can plant a tree with that. So vote with your wallet. Be mindful of how you spend your money. We're now part of 1% for the Planet. That's a great group. There's plenty of vendors, all different types of businesses at 1% for the Planet. So when you're in the market for anything, I would recommend just checking out their website and seeing who's participating. These are groups that really do kick in 1% to some organization like mine or other valid and worthy organizations. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And then, of course, you can donate directly and join our mailing list. And we have fun stuff like,
Yes, I do.
We have in-person events. We have virtual events. And we're starting to partner with other organizations here in the DC area and around the country. Like, for example, there was a post-classical ensemble. I'll give them a plug. They're a great chamber orchestra, kind of under the radar here in Washington. But they had a program called the Play at Pale Blue Dot, and they had curated an amazing list of performances. They were playing La Mer with a chamber orchestra, et cetera, et cetera. They had video. They had children's chorus. It was an amazing performance, but they planted one tree for every ticket sold, and it didn't hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Hank, we will put a link in the show notes to your website and to the donate page and to the Secret Life of Trees book, which I have read and loved. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I learned so much. And listeners, please support ForestPlanet and don't forget the plant a tree.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you as ever.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. My personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends.